wants to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles and how they're getting a revenge game 2 times in 3 weeks versus the Giants. I'm here to tell you that Jackson Dart and
Cam Scatterbo,
the creatine Caucasians are going to do it again. They're making plays. 75% of that game versus the Denver Broncos was absolutely beautiful. They're going to do it for all 60 minutes this weekend.
Picking them to win it again. Wow. All right, we'll talk about that one as we go. Will, give me a bold prediction for Week 8.
Drake May against the Cleveland Browns will throw for 300 yards for the first time this season and cement himself into the MVP conversation. Listen to this stat, boys. On throws over 30 yards, the NFL average, the completion percentage is 40%. With Drake May, he's 23 of 30 for 70%.
That's big numbers right there.
That's big numbers, Danny.
Tough defense in Cleveland, Will.
He's got the right coach. Yeah, tough. Going up against a tough team. All right, we'll talk about that game. Danny, give me a bold prediction.
Yeah, Bears get to 5-2 and end the Ravens season, and it's because of their defense. In this 4-game win streak, the Bears are 43-7, outscoring their opponents in takeaways. This is the number 1 defense in the NFL in takeaways. They have as many picks this year as they did last year. Everyone talks to Ben Johnson and their offense and Caleb Williams. They're riding because of their run game and their defense, and they're going to win again, get to 5-2, get into the playoff conversation in Chicago.
And Shefty will tell you shortly whether or not we expect to see Lamar Jackson in that game. Meanwhile, Hawk, give me a bold prediction.
Yeah, give me a hat-trick sack game for Micah Parsons. That is 3 sacks, Dan, in case you're wondering. Their tackles for the Pittsburgh Steelers are 61 and 68 out of 69 tackles in pass block win rate. LaFleur said Rodgers looks mobile for his age, but it ain't going to be mobile enough for Michael.
Well, that's obviously the game of the weekend. It's a grudge match, decades in the making. Here was Aaron talking about this revenge game against his longtime team, Green Bay.
I don't have any animosity toward the organization. Obviously, I wish that, things have been better in our last year there, but, I have a great relationship with a lot of people still in that organization. And this is not a revenge game for me. I'm just excited to see some of those guys and be on Sunday Night Football again.
Okay, revenge is an interesting word, which is to say that you can parse that a lot of different ways. There's no way in the world this is just another game for him, right?
Right.
I mean, you played in the league forever. You played against teams. You played with guys who were playing against their former teams. For Aaron Rodgers, this is obviously much more than just another game.
Yeah, and everybody around him knows that as well. His teammates are fully understanding that Aaron Rodgers, if he's able to beat the Green Bay Packers, he's one of 5 quarterbacks that were able to beat all 32 teams. It means a lot to him, but it also means a lot to the guys around him to rally around. Seeing the last couple of years, the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs, this means so much for him, but his team understands it as well. They're going to take it to a whole new level this week.
Shefty, as far as the Rodgers side of this is concerned and everything else with Pittsburgh, I mean, we're watching him, we're watching them. What are your thoughts as he gets set to go against Green Bay?
Look, we've seen all the great quarterbacks go up against their former teams. We saw Peyton Manning go up against the Colts, Tom Brady go up against the Patriots. Now we're going to get to go see Aaron Rodgers go up against the Green Bay Packers. I think, yes, it will be personal to a certain extent, but it's also an important game for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who lost last week to Cincinnati, have the Baltimore Ravens coming off their bye this week with a friendly second-half schedule with 2 games against the Steelers. So, yes, of course, it could be a personal thing, but more important for the Steelers to get back on track to make sure that they're in front in the AFC North.
It's actually harder playing against your former team when you don't have any animosity, because you're trying to drum up this competitive nature. And if I hated you, or I had, it ended in a way that I wasn't happy with, extremely unhappy, it's easier to look at you as a competitor. It's harder to be like, these are friends. These are people I know. Him and Love have a good relationship.
Right.
It's not like Rodgers and Favre, which made it easy. I wish these guys hated each other more, actually.
Let's not. Let's not pretend we don't remember how this actually ended.
Yeah, good point.
He may have mellowed over this. Look, spending 2 years with the Jets will make you realize how much better anything previously had been. I understand how that might have changed his perspective on this a little bit. Let's not pretend he walked out of there happy with everybody.
Yeah,
this game is a revenge game, whether he wants to say it or not. That said, Dan Orlovsky is here to tell us that Aaron Rodgers is not the most important player on the field on Sunday night. Who is?
Micah Parsons. You got to block Micah Parsons. You got to treat Micah the way you treated Myles Garrett. Aaron gets the ball out basically faster than any quarterback in the NFL. Micah wins quicker than any lineman in the NFL. Aaron's going to have to play at about less than 3 seconds. There's Micah. How quickly does he win to get to the quarterback? 3.2 to get him on the ground. He contacts him at 2.6, 2.7. Here's the challenge. If you have Micah by himself, good luck. If you double team Micah Parsons and you take your left guard and left tackle, then everybody else is singled up. And that's the thing with this Packers pass rushes, someone else can then win. Rashawn Gary could be the benefactor of, the Pittsburgh Steelers going, Micah Parsons not going to ruin this game, and then Aaron Rodgers is going to get hunted. If Aaron doesn't get the ball out of his hands in about 2.5 seconds, Micah's going to have a field day, and that's going to be the challenge. If Micah doesn't get to Aaron in about 2.5 seconds, they're going to mitigate his impact as much as possible. This game will come down to how well Pittsburgh handles Micah Parsons and how quickly Micah Parsons gets to the quarterback.
And Aaron Rodgers is playing better. We would be remiss if we didn't mention that, because earlier in the season we talked about him being unsettled in the pocket. None of that is showing on film. What they actually need is some help at the wide receiver. Shefty, I know you talked about them being in that market, but like Calvin Austin will be back. They need something outside of DK Metcalf. Because it's not enough on the edge.
They're throwing the ball, their tight ends an awful lot, but as Hembo pointed out, their wide receivers are averaging 6.3 catches per game. There are wide receivers across the league who come up with more than that in one game by themselves. Puka Nacua regularly, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Pittsburgh could use more help on the outside. They're getting help from tight ends. They're getting help from DK Metcalf, who's making plays. They're getting the run game going.
Are they interested in wide receivers?
I think they're going to be looking around, and if there's a deal to be had, I think they'd be interested.
Do a little window shopping.
Yeah,
Window shopping, see around there a little bit.
When you're in first place, usually window shopping.
Maybe they could trade for George Pickens. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know. A lot of weird things happen. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys right now, the one guy they could really use is Micah Parsons. Who knows how good they would be? The Pittsburgh Steelers, the one guy they could really use is George Pickens. Who knows how good they would be? How about that whole side of it? There's no way in the world, if you watched the game between Green Bay and Arizona last week, which we all did in that crazy late window on Sunday afternoon, they don't win that game without Micah Parsons, right? He has made himself the most important player on that team this fast.
100%. And Pittsburgh's going to have to win at explosive plays. And unfortunately, Green Bay is I think second in the league at not allowing explosive plays. Because when I look at this game, it's going to have to be, if you're going to win with Pittsburgh, it's going to have to be similar to the Cowboys versus the Packers, where I believe Aaron Rodgers is going to have like 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. They're going to have to, have a lot of offense, because Steelers defense, once again, they got away from what they were doing the previous 2 weeks, and they're looking like they were in those first 4 weeks where they're not playing very well defensively. Guys running wide open. And I do think the Packers are going to take advantage of this, underperforming, underwhelming Steelers defense.
Well, that's really the story here. Matt, we could put the picks up on the screen at some point, make our first picks of the weekend. We're split on this game. The story here, look, we all want to make this about Micah because he's a superstar. We want to make it about Rodgers because he's playing his former team. Dan, to me, and I made this point earlier this week, the biggest story here is that the Steelers defense is the most disappointing unit in the entire league. They get paid $1 trillion. They're supposed to be carrying a 41, soon-to-be 42-year-old quarterback back to glory. Instead, he's dragging them along with everything he has. He's more than holding up his end. The Pittsburgh defense has been extremely disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, last Thursday night, they were as disappointing as any team that we've seen in football. I think the biggest thing for the Steelers is, their run defense, they stand up all game. They're so easy to push around. And then, watching this game last Thursday night, it was like defensively, they were trying to trick Joe Flacco so much they tricked themselves. And that's how the receivers got so, they were trying to rotate coverages and send things to the offense that no one ever seen. So I think, specifically to this game with Pittsburgh's defense, they're at a disadvantage because Green Bay can put 2 tight ends on the field and run the football. This run defense in Pittsburgh, when you put 2 tight ends on the field, stinks. And so if they don't start to get lower against the run, watch in this game. Watch Pittsburgh's front defensive line. You'll see before the snap, you can't see their numbers. After snap, you can see their numbers. They stand straight up. If you do that versus LaFleur and Josh Jacobs and Tucker Kraft and those tight ends, they'll run for 200 yards.
Yeah, we'll see. I'd love to see the picks on the screen for the Steelers. I'd like to see Aaron win this game, but I think this is a very tough spot for him. I think Green Bay scores points in this game. Rodgers in a shootout. Suddenly, Micah Parsons goes crazy. I think it's a tough spot for the Steelers. We're just getting rolling. We're going to need to get